we were doing.
All right, we're going live.
All right.
Comments are already going.
Everybody's excited.
Amanda.
Mr. Tim Dooner in the house today.
He gets a rocket in the comments.
I'll pull them up. Oh, look at that. Look at that. You already got people here.
We're already rock. This isn't freight waves, Tim.
I know. There's already
Hold
people
my
here.
beer. We don't mess around here. We got a huge following.
You got Andrew Teal. He's in the house.
64 people watching. Watch the last one.
Bobby the Bus. Bob Boosie.
Bussy's in. All right, gang. Nicole, you're great at starting it off. I start to mumble. You go with it.
Oh, we're hosting a cool show today with Mr. Tim Dooner. We all know and love What the Truck and Put Down That Coffee. So this is really exciting.
Right,
Who's got the echo?
Who's got to mute their YouTube?
Is that me? I don't think it's me.
Tony, is it you?
I don't even have YouTube on.
Okay, me neither. So we were going to just get some background. We want to hear the story of Tim Dooner and really how all of these wonderful things came together to make you who you are today. So without the cheese, just wanted to get an understanding of really how everybody started in the industry and, you know, the different path that you took and how everything kind of led to this buildup of cool stuff that's going on in your life. So would love to hear a little bit about that. Let's start it off. I know TJ, you take over now. I'm drinking my wine today.
I think we should say the best for last. If Dooner tells his story first, then everyone's going to leave us.
Yeah.
Hang on. Let me hear your stories, man. Let's get to know one another. Let's get comfortable. Let's drink some pepper.
My name's TJ Knudson. Oh, I can change the color of my lighting.
Is that how you say your last name? Now I know.
Yeah. that's the DDP. That'll go down smooth.
Hey, wait.
Unlike Tony, I didn't start my career hauling horses illegally. He'll get to that part of the story, but no, I worked in the finance industry in sales, and had a pretty large territory like northern Indiana. Was traveling a lot. We had our first kid. I'm just gonna be dead honest with you. Everybody that I work with knows this, but I needed to take a job to still sell, but like be in an office setting and not have to be all around and a lot of hours. And so I talked to a buddy that I went to Ball State with. He had been at TQL for a long time. I didn't know anything about logistics, but I mean, he just straight up told me, he's like, without going into detail, he's like, you don't want to work here. Like our model is just a little bit different with, so he gave me some advice, and I came to Circle. They were just starting. You know, they had the drop ceiling. It basically looked like Brandon's basement. And so I came in, and I was just going to really honestly take the job just until I found another one. And I got in there. I almost didn't go in for the interview. I sat in the parking lot, like, really? But anyway, so I started and went with it. And I don't know, there's something about the atmosphere. There's a couple people here that are still here that just had that kind of drive. And I realized that I was good at it. I mean, the cool part is we have, at that time, especially the headquarters in Fort Wayne, we had like a lot of trucks. So that we were almost based all around the trucks at the beginning, the assets. So like there was always, it's not like brokerage where you have to like start off and go find an account. You don't get to get in the weeds yet. Like I was able to jump kind of into the weeds, find backhauls, get on the phone, realize I was good at it. And then we started prospecting, and it just started growing and growing. And it was, 10 guys in a room slinging freight. And then now we're like top 40 in North America.
I didn't know that Circle is the only place that you've called home.
I left for a little bit to start up a brokerage internally with a customer, and then came back, but it was only for about 5 months or so during the COVID thing. But because I did it and then COVID hit, so it was kind of like, oh, that sucks. It's like right when I made a huge decision. But no, I've always had a good relationship with them. It's pretty cool to be as big as we are now and still be able to walk into either one of the owner's offices. And I look to them as mentors. I got a lot of people here that are great, but it was pretty cool because it was like going from a dispatch oriented, moving trucks type situation. Our old office was over at the North American Van Lines headquarters, like the old one, like back in the day, old one. Now Sweetwater had bought it, and they're doing their thing there. But And so it was just very truck oriented. And then we started landing accounts in 2018, started rolling in, and people needed capacity, and we started brokering. And then our Chicago office started with brokerage, really grew. And we've always been big in expedites. And then we were cradle to grave, and we came to a point finally where, you get to a point cradle to grave where like the good people are landing accounts and they have no incentive to hand them off. Like I have no incentive I'm keeping my pipeline full because I know that like I could lose an account tomorrow for some reason, but there's no incentive to hand them off. So, you're looking at it from the big structure. It's like, a lot of accounts are only getting half worked. You're not getting the full potential out of all of them because you've always got your little niche and your little click with each account. So we just did a full restructure. About the time we got the new office, and the three of us that were like top producers became 2 of us director and 1 VP. And I built the carrier sales team, the SOP for that. And then the account management team. And then the cool part is we had a lot of guidance, but it was like very try it. We just threw a lot of stuff at the wall, see what stuck. We knew how to book freight either way. And I wish I would have had the connections I have now back then for as much advice. But I mean, we grinded it out. We had some people with some good experience, and we just tweaked as we went. So it's just been a weird ride. It's like a blur.
Yeah.
It is a blur. It goes by quick.
Yeah.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's like 20 years. Believe it or not. Seriously. I remember working and starting in freight, but I want to hear from Tony. Let's hear this illegal horse hauling. Like, what the hell?
We're bull wrangling.
All right. So my mom had a corporate gig and at a pharmaceutical company, and my dad was self-employed, old truck driver. We got off the road. He hauled Hummers. The AM General, the manufacturing plant, is it's a mile down the road from my house.
What's
Every
the
Hummer.
ugliest car that was ever created? Car,
Oh,
SUV,
yeah.
whatever.
Well, it was military for years and years and years before that. But so we hauled the military Hummers, and I rode with my dad. My dad was always in self-employed some way or another, and it always landed back in trucking somehow. And it was just fun. I enjoyed it as a kid. I was just a little kid sitting on my dad's lap in his pickup truck, hauling a trailer, holding the steering wheel while he drove. Was just, I don't know. I loved it. I loved every bit of it. And then my parents got into this deal where they were hauling horses, cradle to grave. So there was 2 different kinds of horse haulers out there. There was these big semis that wanted you to pick up your $200,000 prized mare at a truck stop parking lot at 1 a.m. or there was mom and pop that drove 250 miles a day and boarded them at night. And we kind of went door to door nonstop, somewhere in between there, adding that little niche, and just made a killing, doing great at it. And accident, my mom was in a hospital in a coma for a long time, got out, had to have 24-hour supervision. My parents ended up divorcing. My mom went out.
There's your internet, your Indiana internet.
Man, that was just starting to get deep too.
Yeah, I know. He'll come back.
It's not all of Indiana. It's just that northern area where all the Amish are. That's where
The guy who churns the butter to keep the internet going is
his
taking a
story.
break.
Long story short, he worked his way up. He was a true team.
Did nothing with it.
Tony, we missed like all of that.
We missed all.
It sounded good though. I mean, it was really going somewhere.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Your
my
kids
parents
get off
get
the Wi-Fi.
right. So my parents got divorced, and I 3 years later picked up this horse hauling company out of nothing and just started going on my own. And I took my mom with me, and we got going and made a ton of money and realized we were doing it well. And life happened. I was young and I was making too much money at that age for my maturity level. And next thing you know, I had a factory job. And I wanted to get out of that, and I didn't know how to do it. And I ended up, my mom had moved to Texas. I moved to Texas with my mom to straighten my life out and grow up. And I got a CDL and went back to driving, enjoyed it. Did that for about 12, 15 years, and then got on the other side of the desk and started being the shipper instead of the driver in the private fleet. Been doing that for, I don't know, 10, 12 years now, and here we are.
Nice.
From horses to steel to RV parts.
The way life goes.
And
Dude, I have to. We're not saving you for last. We gotta hear it.
but Tim,
Tell us.
doing
Yeah.
it real quick.
Yeah.
And I don't know if maybe you could plug this on What the Truck or put that coffee down. But Tony is a top 5 shipper in Northern Indiana. RV Magazine came out with that one, so that's I don't know if you know that or not, but
There's no such thing, Dooner. No such thing. This is a TJ award.
I love Tony. I love you.
Speaking of magazines, I was admiring Brandon Bay's basement over there, the ceiling. Now that, like, when I was 15, that would be my dream come true, because like up there I would just move those panels away and I'd hide like Mortal Kombat on Sega Genesis with the blood code and dirty magazines I found in the woods, and maybe some illicit materials. No, but those are great, and that's a man cave thing. That's my next aspiration. I'm in an apartment right now, but I need panels.
Yep. Well, it's good, Dooner, because like I said, my wife didn't come down here, so we'll label it the man cave. She's scared of what's up there, so it's a win-win for both of us.
Wait, you want me to tell my life story now?
Yeah.
Or
I
how
hear
I got
it.
into the industry? Okay.
Going in the way of how we're going
Yes,
around the circle.
around the room.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm back at AA. Okay, so hi, my name is Dooner, and I'm an alcoholic. I really am. It's true. I've been sober for 4 years this November. That's why I'm drinking Diet Dr. Pepper. But I started out in the music industry back in like 2000. I left college and I was working for a record label. I was a band scout, and then this motherfucker called Napster happened, and it dried up a lot of money in the industry. And it's kind of like a parallel of maybe what we're seeing with digital freight brokerages coming in and that stuff. Not nearly as bad or that kind of thing, but there are some parallels about like companies that do need to upgrade their technology and all that stuff. But I was in music for a bit. The money dried up there, so I moved back to Boston, and I needed a job really bad. I was trying to get a job with Harmonix, who made the game Guitar Hero. You guys remember that one?
Yeah. Love it.
I know. So they were in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but I couldn't get them to talk to me. I couldn't get a job with them or anything. So after like 3 months, I was running out of money, and I called up my dad. He worked for Roanoke Insurance, so he knew the freight world in Boston. He was like, "Well, you're probably not going to like it, but I can get you an interview with this guy over at FedEx Trade Networks," which was like over the river and through the woods for me. I was living in Dorchester in Boston, and I didn't have a car. Like, it was one of the reasons I moved to the city. But FedEx Trade Networks was in East Boston, which is like, if you don't have a car, it's the red line to the orange line to the blue line to a train station, and then like a 1.5 mile walk to FedEx. But I really needed a job, and I interviewed there. I didn't know what a broker was, but when I took the job, I stayed with it for a while, but I realized that like, since I knew nothing about this, I had to like move around the company as much as possible, get promoted and move into other divisions and stuff. So I started out like, this industry. I started out at FedEx Trade Networks. They just landed this big Reebok account, right? So what do? What do people in freight do? And like, they hire a bum off the street like me, and they put me in charge of the air freight for their huge Reebok account. The true story. So I was like trial by fire. I had to figure it out like really quick. And like systems back then too. I mean, this was like 2005, but like these were like DOS based, like for doing entry clearances. Like, yeah, I hit like tab key, and there's no Windows. This was like DOS, man. This was like going back in time with like Turtle moving around the screen, playing a lemonade stand. Those were those graphics. But so I did that, and I was doing air freight. Then I was like, well, this is like, I need to learn more. So I switched over to ocean. Then I switched to doing duty drawback, which was really interesting because that taught me a lot about imports and exports and regulatory stuff like that. Try to get my customs broker license, but I have no attention span. I'm like terrible at studying. So I was like, that's not going to work out. So then this company called Talbot's came by, and they're like, we need a bonded warehouse and we need CD PAT revalidation. So I got to go on the shipper side for a little bit and experience like the outlook from that side. And then I got into FDA air freight. I worked for this company called Vandergriff, which was, it was okay. I mean, all these jobs I didn't really like. I wanted to sort of do more or figure out how to do like more with what I was doing in life. But at the same time, I had like been drinking for a long time, and this like helped pay, the packy and help keep the liquor store going. So I was like learning, but I could have done it a lot better if I had like been better to myself and focused better on it. I ended up like getting in sales and getting front facing and going through that. And when I started doing sales, I started doing a lot more training. And I noticed that a lot of the training sucked. Like, I think there was like 1 or 2 podcasts out at the time, but they were basically just webinars with the audio stripped out of them. They weren't produced like podcasts. They weren't trying to be podcasts. Someone in a marketing department probably told some other random guy within the company to just like strip some audio and upload it so they have a podcast because, you know, they saw an interview on CNN or something. And I started getting this idea that like, because I'd been listening to podcasts since 2009, that if I had a podcast, it'd be like a really good icebreaker. You know, a lot of times I'm calling up with sales calls and be like, hey, do you want to, you don't know who the F I am, but do you want to talk to me? And can I come in and sell you some freight? And I'm like, man, if I had a podcast, it'd be much easier to just be like, hey, I want to interview you and find out about your business. So I tried to pitch it to this company I was working for in Boston. And
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that is so creative. That is like such a salesperson, because thinking outside of the box of how to get your foot in the door. That's awesome. So I apologize, but that just got me excited because I didn't realize that that's how that started.
Well, it's kind of been like a Trojan horse and a guiding light for me. And it's something I've been trying to really push. I tried to do it in 2015 with the job I was with. In 2016, I had the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life happened to me in 2016, which is in November when my wife was 8 months pregnant. I got the dreaded email, you know, at 11 o'clock at night, like bring in the playbook, you know, bring in your cell phone, bring your laptop. So, you know, so I had to go in there. And I remember like when they fired me, and I only been there for like 7 months or something, but the job was like shit anyway. I was not a fan, but also it was like sustaining my lifestyle, a kid on the way. But what happened is they fired me and they're like, we're going to pay for 1 month of health insurance because we know your wife is pregnant. So thank you. God bless them for that. But I remember I got in the parking lot and the first thing I thought was like, great, because they gave me my severance check right away. And I'm like, I'm going to go and get a handle of like Tito's vodka. And I did that. I got it and I got another one. And like for like 10 days straight, I was just like obliviated. And then I was like, you know what? I got to do something about this. So I just had this revelation like in the middle of the night. I'm like, you know what? I got to start taking control of this stuff. So I checked myself into rehab for depression and for alcoholism. And I started working on this podcast I started to launch because I'm like, now's the best time to do it. Because now as a podcast, instead of being a Trojan horse to sales calls, I can use it as like a living resume. So I started this show called The Shipping Pod, basically right after I got out of rehab after 6 days. You know, it took a little time to make a logo and I had to buy like a $20 mic off Amazon and I had to get a cheap mixer and a cheap computer and all that shit. But I got it and I started this show called The Shipping Pod and it took off really quickly. And I think because I was doing it like a podcast instead of like a webinar. And like, I had no competition. Like Joe Lynch was doing it. I think Joe Lynch had launched around that time.
Oh, hold on. Robinson. Joe Lynch wanted me to tell you hi. I talked to him before.
Oh yeah. Well, he's a sweetheart. Kisses, Joe. Kisses, brother.
Joe.
So I mean, so I started a podcast and I was doing that independently for like a year. The Aborn and Company started paying me to like ghostwrite their blogs, and that was like helped keep me alive. My first year of doing podcasting, I made like I don't know $9,000 to $10,000, give or take, and it wasn't from podcasting; it was indirectly, but it did what I wanted to do. It got me a job in marketing, and it got me paid to podcast, which was for Aborn and Company. I started their show called Consulting Logistics. They made me their director of marketing, and I got to learn a lot from there. And then from there, I interviewed a guy named Craig Fuller from FreightWaves. And then right afterwards, he was like, hey, you want to come over to FreightWaves and help, you know, build out our podcast network and all that stuff. And now we got the biggest podcast network on earth. You know, I feel like a beaver building my dam and I fucking love it. So that's my story.
So you started FreightWaves?
No, the Freightcast, the podcasting thing there.
That is awesome. Congratulations on sobriety. Everybody's saying it in the comments. And hell of a story, man. I appreciate that.
That's so raw and honest. I love that.
Thank you.
You know, at the end of the day, we all started with Reebok and upgraded.
Yeah. No, what are you kicking around now? I like to go with like Converse All-Stars, but I also like Doc Martens. I like cowboy boots. Depends on
I'm into the
like slides.
Hey, and you may like you guys know what the dude shoes are? Dudes?
No.
You've seen them? They're like the slip-on. They're like.
Must be anything. Did you get them at Meijer?
At Meijer? No, that's where I get my shirts there.
To get my groceries there.
That's where I get my groceries. No, they're called Dudes. Like if you could Google them, but they're pretty sweet. Look them up. You'd like them. Yep, I got like 10 pairs of them. They're my favorite. So yeah, so Brandon Bay is here too as well to tell his story. But you get to follow up after Dooner, man. Good.
Yeah, I know.
Excuse me. Sorry, it's Diet Dr. Pepper talking.
Hey,
tough story to follow, but yeah, no, I appreciate hearing all of, obviously hold my beer, and then especially Dooner. I've kind of been in trucking my whole life, kind of, sort of. My dad and my family all ran flatbeds down in southern Missouri. You know, mostly local. We were in the sawmills. lumbers, ties, things of that. So I've been around trucking, but my dad always told me, he's like, I never want you to be in a truck. I always want you to go to school. I want you to do something, but I don't want you to get stuck inside a truck. And that's not anything bad, because I respect our truck drivers more than you guys ever know. So my dad just didn't want that for me. So I didn't, don't want to come off the wrong way, but that's just what my dad wanted. And so I went to college, and during college I was needed a job. So I started working part-time for Verizon in the mall. I was that guy that was, pulling you in the side and trying to sell you cell phones. And this is right when, like, talking about time-wise, like when the iPhone launched for AT&T, and I was for Verizon, they had that shitty little, I don't even know what it was. It was supposed to compete with the iPhone, but it was junk. So that's how I kind of got into sales, and I went up through Verizon, and then I actually moved to Indiana and lived in Kokomo, and then worked at Chrysler for a little bit in the transmission plant, and then I got a job with Union Pacific Railroad. So kind of progressed, and the Chrysler job was because my mom's side of the family worked there, and they wanted me to work there for their whole life. And then I went to Union Pacific Railroad, which I thought my life was made. I worked 8 days on, 7 days off, so I could go home and drink and party and do whatever I wanted for those 7 days off. And then I came back, worked for the railroad. We worked in maintenance of way, and I drove a truck for them. I had my Class A CDL, which I still hold. But then I got in an on-track accident. I've been there for 3 years, and I got fired on the spot. And so I thought my life was over. I spent 6 months to just trying to sell off all the junk that I'd accumulated from working on the railroad so I could survive. And I poured concrete for a while, did everything that I could. And I had finally got down to where I knew the railroad, I was not going back. In my mind, we had a union, and I'm like, oh, I'll be back in 6 months. Yeah, that didn't happen. So one weekend I had 2 interviews planned. I had one in St. Louis to work as a carrier rep, and the other one to go work on the riverboats. And so I went to St. Louis.
Like a Renaissance man. You're on like railroads and riverboats. I like it.
So those sticks with the handkerchief,
Yeah.
Been over there.
So I moved to St. Louis, just over five years ago, and started off at $25,000 with a DAT login, and said, and a phone, said start dialing. That was my training. Yep. And I fell in love with it. I mean, I really, my biggest regret is not finding this industry sooner than I did. I really love it. And I was able to kind of combine sales, my knowledge on my CDL, and kind of being in the trucking industry, and moved into sales. And then kind of built a team within St. Louis, and ended up moving to Nashville to open a branch for that company. And, just kind of progressed in that way. And from the ground up, I mean, I really tried to, throughout my career, being at the different levels of being, on the truck driver, on the driver's side, and then 2, being in the operations on the carrier sales, but then also 2, like, how does, sales and operations work together? And then, obviously, learning leadership. So, I've been in Nashville, and really networked, and was able to start the Nashville Transportation Club, which is a non-for-profit. And so through all of this, it's just really been a great ride, and very thankful for this industry in every capacity. And I'm just glad that I found it, but just only regret that I didn't find it soon enough. I mean, it's been a great journey, and yeah, I'm just very thankful.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah, it is. It going railroad too. I mean, that isn't easy, is it? I mean,
No, my brother-in-law's in it still, and that's very, very regulated. I can see safety is the biggest thing. He literally is updating his resume, and I'm like, you got 2 lines here. Do you want me to add anything? He goes, oh shit, add the word safely. I was like, okay, safely did blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So my dad, my brother, my cousin, 2 of my cousins, they all work for Union Pacific, and obviously on the freight side, we're talking about how capacity is decreasing because the railroads have really upped there and doubled their prices. Well, on the flip side, Union Pacific specifically is going through PSC right now, which is precision schedule, and they're laying people off. My dad's got 11 years in, and they've already cut. I mean, my brother's not working, and he's got 6 years in. So they're cutting all their workforce. They're cutting, all of their employees on the side to get as thin as possibly can to pump up the stocks. So it's very interesting. The tonnage is increasing obviously on the transportation side, but my dad's calling me and he's like, yeah, 11 years, I might have to get back in a truck because, they're starting to cut for precision scheduling railroading. It's really interesting.
My brother-in-law's in North Platte for UP. So he's part of that. Yeah. So I get to hear a lot about it.
There it is, guys. Can you see that?
Are those the Jews?
This is not happening.
They got all different types of colors and stuff.
Wow. They're fluffy.
Some are
kind of
vetted.
like they're made of towels.
Some are gray.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's like a spa shoe. That's a
Watch
like, start wiping yourself off.
They're actually free at the hotel. They came with a robe, and I just took them.
I'll have to ask my wife. I think we sent some to my sister for Christmas. I'll have to see how she likes them.
You get dark gray. There's vetted ones, black, all types of stuff, guys.
I like how nobody got into this business on purpose. None of us actually tried to say, "Hey, I want to get into logistics," and here we all are. And
it's never like what everybody had. It's kind of weird. It's almost like I remember sitting down recruiting one time, and like we were bringing in these accounts. We needed good people. We're like, where do we find people like that? Like, where do we find people that were married, had no money? Their cars sucked. They were broke. They were just dire. Like, it's almost like you got to find like that right type of person. Cause I remember like in my mind, I just couldn't fail. I
don't know about you guys, but I'm still that way.
Yeah. But like, I couldn't fail. I mean, I just remember, finding a way. I don't know how many flat tires I went through in my car cause I couldn't afford to take care of it. It was just, I tried to hide all that from everybody and just keep grinding it out because there's always that potential. It was always so crazy how close you were from landing just a huge account. You didn't know what you were going to get. So it was tough. But the people that push through, that's why it's tough in this industry too, because you see so many people give up. But like Dooner said, like the only way to really get good and to move up is to kind of get into everything.
Yeah.
And that's what really helped us was, back in the day, we didn't have what we had now. Like you had to land the account, work the account, get the load, build the load, cover the load, track the load, and help build the load.
Yeah.
And then
build the load myself too for
help build it, like get the billing done on it. Like it was like everything, and then you could do that on the brokerage side and the truck side. We were doing both. It was just like all this at once. And then, we've got to where it's organized, but it was tough, but it was like one of those things too, where like everybody was going through it. So if you made a mistake, it was more like, let's gather around, talk about it, figure it out. And, being in the automotive industry too, it's just the expedites. We did a lot of we dealt with some situations. We paid $14,000 for a plane to come in and get 2 pallets because we're going to shut a plant down. Imagine going through that. We didn't sleep that whole night. It was like, then you wake up the next morning, you got this high of some sort. Why? I don't know. You spent $14,000, but you like got it done. You figured it out. Like you're driving down the road and you're like, none of you people on this road right now figured out how to get 2 pallets from Minnesota to Windsor on a plane last night. Like, you know what I mean? There's something about it, even though it cost us $14,000 and we were in trouble. So I think it's what makes it so fun.
And Andrew Teal says that he did this on purpose, so he's the one. But you know what? I noticed something. A lot of us have like a parental background or someone in the family, like it's in the blood. Like we were cursed, like werewolves. We're just waiting for that full moon to join this thing.
The Dooner eclipse.
Yeah, total curse to the heart. Turn around.
I've been in it for almost 20 years now, and I did same. I got pulled in. I actually was that auto parts delivery chick with the little Ford Ranger, in the year 2000, where they would order, and I worked at Pep Boys. You guys everybody know what Pep Boys is?
I know what Pep Boys is.
I know what Pep Boys is.
Yeah. So I actually worked the parts counter. So the dudes and chicks would come in and I would give them the parts. And then I started doing the little deliveries, and they canceled it, that whole program. So then I, had this guy come in and he was like, "Hey, do you want a job?" I was like, "Who the hell does that?" Got this 18-year-old kid in college. So I ended up going. I'm like, whatever, fuck it. I want to see what this is about. And I went to this place and checked it out. And it was an old man that worked there who I ended up loving. He was the father of my boss, so it was his buddy. So I literally was 18 with 40-year-old, 60-year-old, a 65-year-old guy they were all in freight.
I was going to say, Nicole, you don't even look like, I mean, I didn't even know you could be in freight for 20 years. I thought, maybe
Seriously.
5.
Yeah, 18 I got in, and
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
and got to really put the headsets on. And I know everybody says it with the DAT list, but we had a DAT computer. That's all that it was for the DAT. But I ended up working there for 3 years in the cradle to the grave concept, where we did everything. And it was, I always say this term, I say I was in freight when freight wasn't cool. When you say, oh, I'm in logistics now, people go, oh, I know so-and-so and so-and-so in logistics and this and this and that. When I would say I was in logistics, people would go, so you deal with trucks? Like, it was a very, very different world, all guys. And then here I was, this, young 20-year-old kid. So it was fun growing up in it. I loved it being on.
Nicole, I thought, like you mentioned, that sort of that mainstreamification. I hope FreightWaves has helped pushing that message forward too. But even like Robin Hood Snacks this morning, I was reading that and they were talking about Uber Freight in there. The Morning Brew the other day was talking about I forget, some sort of logistics stuff, but I like that it's getting into the mainstream press. And you didn't really see that until like 2016 when the trade war started to happen. And then a lot this year when people couldn't find anything to wipe their ass with.
Seriously.
That's a great point.
This year was great. Didn't you guys think so? Like, the actual
Absolutely.
normal person understood and thanked the driver and the logistics industry to make stuff happen. In 20 years of doing this, I've never witnessed anything like that.
Yeah, it's been a game changer for this
I took
industry knowledge to get out to the common folks.
I took a video on the I was on the highway one time. I think Dooner mentioned it one time during the COVID thing, and it's just like a rest stop off the highway, almost to like the small town I live in, and there was like 3 local food trucks that would go out there every day it was a huge truck parking area, and they just go out there every single day. Like, they would never be there, but it was just like this big thing, this big push on like, these guys are, out on the road. We're all told to stay inside and be scared. And these guys are driving around delivering all our stuff for us. So it was pretty cool.
What's lame though? Like, they tried to, a lot of the rest stops banned the food trucks from coming in, even though like the restaurants were closed and you couldn't pull a semi through the drive-through. A lot of rest stops were like, I got to protect mine. Get that out of here.
Wow.
Well, a lot of the rest stops just closed in general. So the drivers had nowhere to go, nowhere to park.
Pennsylvania,
terrible for them.
that was a big thing.
Yeah.
It's easy. I think what this year's taught me is it's easy to look at all the negatives, obviously from the global side of it. But when you really drill down, like, all the positives, like we said, having the ability to network, having the ability for these podcasts. I remember too, obviously I was talking a little bit earlier before we started, you get scared, and this was before the pandemic, or, but it's like, oh, I'm scared to even turn these cameras on, or, use Teams or Slack. I mean, all of that stuff has really, I think, helped people communicate. And now I feel weird if I like have a video conference call and I'm like, why isn't your camera on? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Before, when everybody comes in and their camera's off. So I think, with all the bad things that's happened, I think there's been a lot of great things within that's happened. And I think that, it's easy to lose sight of that sometimes, but, shows like this and just, talking about it just kind of makes you think like, yeah, man, it's been a good year in a lot of ways, versus, everybody thinking it's always bad.
And the learning, it's weird. The continued education, my degree is actually in sports medicine. So that's my undergrad athletic training.
Mine's underwater basket weaving.
I went to grad school for physical therapy. So like in the health industry, it's like all about continued education, right? Like, you got to have CEU, like a certain amount of CEUs every year, like continuing education units. You can go get different degrees, you can advance, but like you get into freight and then you're kind of in your niche. I don't know. It really opened my eyes. I had made the jump to go out and start, a new brokerage with a company, and left what I had known was Circle Logistics. And I at that point, that's when, COVID came in, and we got in. I got involved with Cassandra, and it was like all of a sudden it was like it just opened your eyes at how much learning was out there. I mean, I will tell you this, it humbled me. I was real cocky. I thought I knew it. I mean, we were on top of the world. We grew this thing from nothing to something. We've done everything. We know everything. And then you get out there and you're like, oh, like you get into some conversations and you're like, I kind of feel like an idiot right now. Like, I didn't know that. That is so cool. At first you're kind of shy from it, but then you're like, I want to keep doing this. Like, who's this guy? What's this guy doing? What, he's talking about that. And wait, I mentioned something that I do that's like minimal, but he didn't know anything about it. He thought that was really cool. And you start realizing like you don't know everything. You just know a lot about your like what you've done and what you've been involved in. And there's so much more out there.
Hot comments. Hot comments.
Hot comments, man. That was a big thing.
There was one thing that you guys listed out as a topic we were going to cover today, and I would love to hear this, what everyone really thinks, and the options to consider when deciding or accepting a role within logistics. So if you guys take all of your experience that you've had, just working, doesn't necessarily even apply to logistics, but having the knowledge of logistics, if we have people listening, what is it that you guys would recommend to people when they're contemplating going into a different type of role or accepting a role at a company?
Number one is culture.
How do you find the culture? What do you do, Tony?
You do your homework. You figure out if that's a place where you fit. Do they have the values and morals and ethics that you want to be a part of? Is there a team that focuses on leadership? Are they focusing on numbers? Are they focusing on growth? Are they focusing on intrinsic value, or are they focusing on leadership development?
Preach on. I love it.
Yep.
Find somebody who leads that team well. Find somebody who works for that guy that says that guy's a great leader.
You know what's cool with LinkedIn now? You have the capabilities of doing that.
Absolutely.
Reach out to people and say, hey, I'm interviewing at your company. What do you think about it? And ask those questions.
I think, you know, when we looked at that topic from a logistics standpoint, like in a like kind of what Dooner was talking about was, you know, going into a different role, whether it's, you know, going from account manager to carrier sales to maybe a pod leader, you know, or a team leader, or to, you know, the asset side or brokerage side, and, you know, going into different roles that way. You know, I think one big thing is, and I kind of touched on it just from like the whole learning from other people. When you get your strength and you find your strength, you run with it. You've got ownership of that. Like when you really find your strength. And so when we started recruiting, it was something I tried to do. It was like, you know, we're recruiting like strictly for this exact role. And half the time we bring them in, we find out that they're not good at that. We move them over to somewhere anyways. We're just wasting time. Like, let's just put a general operations specialist in there, come in, let them figure out what their strength is, and they're going to gravitate to it. You know, I mean, that's what they're going to, when I came in on the asset side here, I talked about the restructure I did was I let people, I just kind of sat back for like the first month and watched, and it was so disorganized, but because everybody had to do everything, but only everybody's gravitating to their strength. Like one person would do this really, really well, but would drop the ball over here. So everybody would complain about that, and then vice versa. And I would just say, like, find your strength, step back, and just like think about like what you're really good at. Because it's hard. Sometimes you focus on what people complain about you on, because you try to justify, like, you know, this guy bitches about me doing this all the time, but focus on what you're good at and see if there's an available role there, even if it's just internally, or what you're doing, if you're networking or whatever, and just go with it. I know it's not going to be the most comfortable thing, but say, hey, listen, I'm really good at this. What do you have available? Like, what can, you know, look around and research what other roles there are, because I've seen such a huge difference in the guy that was great with drivers, but couldn't book a load to save his life, you know, is now in charge of like driver communication, and he just loves it. Like, he's just taken off with it, you know, and the guy that was great at booking loads, but couldn't communicate to save his life is just booking loads, you know, and it's like, everybody just like grabbed it and ran, and like there was no pitching at all. Like, everybody loves what everybody's doing because they feel like that ownership of it. And it wasn't, I would never have done that before, after coming out and just seeing all the different types of roles and meeting and talking with all people like you, and just being like, hey, these people are just really good at what they do, and they're not doing everything. They're not trying to do everything. They're just mastering what they do, and then learning more along the way to develop. But you know, I think if you're looking for a new role and you're transitioning a new role in this industry, don't just jump on the first thing that opens up or something that pays more. Go with your strength and build that.
Well, Andrew Till says, for me, will I learn from this role? How do I grow? Does it move me towards my ultimate goal? Taking role, not company there. Today's, you know, Tony's right on culture. So thanks for the comment, Andrew.
Dooner, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I think we touched on a little bit earlier. One of the beautiful things about this business, this industry, is that it can be a second or third or fourth or fifth chance hotel, because the education background like that's expected in many other industries isn't the same here. You don't need the same exact degrees and qualifications. So as an entry point, logistics, you can pretty much go anywhere. I mean, I started out doing air freight for Reebok, and now I run a podcast network for Freightway. So I'm on the other side of media, and I walked all the way through the house to get there. And anybody can do that. You can just put in hard work, and that's or you can open your own business, or you can open your own digital freight brokerage. I mean, it's going to change. The barrier to entry is going to get much harder, and this is probably getting near the sunset on how easy it kind of is to get in here with limited qualification and just build out and expand like the blob. But I mean, while the getting's good, you should get in. I think it's cool they're putting education and stuff behind it too. But the cool thing is this is a job that like, it's very abstract to look at in a book. You know, you can't just read a bunch of white papers and figure out logistics. You actually have to clear some freight. You have to book some loads. You have to and see how this operates in the real world. But in terms of like job and opportunity, like for me, the biggest motivator is always like, what is the growth potential of this position? And that could be like personal growth. That could be just in like just learning about the business in general. So that's usually how I validate opportunities. I think culture is a big one too, but that's a little bit more position dependent and maybe not as huge in a remote world. But I mean, for sales, it can be different too. Because a lot of sales, especially in Boston area, most sales jobs are like, here's a business card, go out there and sell freight. If you haven't sold enough in 9 months, you're out the door. I mean, that's that culture.
And that's the difference. When we started looking at, you know, places that had supply chain degrees, right? Logistics supply chain degrees, the corporations suck them right up. I mean, they're gone. I mean, they go in to do the supply chain stuff, you know, a lot of them. I mean, it's very rare to see them go down and join a brokerage and just be a broker on the floor, you know? So you get a different type of toughness. I mean, Dooner, you ran with your strength, you know, obviously, you know, the way you communicate and talk and you look at this, just things like, you know, you look at Chris Jolly, you know, like he's realizing now that like how he's approaches things and his professionalism and his values and how he does stuff can work for him, whether or not he's booking freight or teaching people how. You know, for me, it was I started on the asset side. I went to the brokerage because it was flashy and nobody wants to be over with the trucks. But then when I left, I just kind of realized I kept focusing. I kept talking about it for some reason. I don't know why. And so I'm like, I just went, you know, I just said, hey, this is where it is. And Tony loves RVs. So
I would say for my suggestion is to really interview the company that you're going for, kind of off of what Tony said. I talk to people and they're constantly nervous. Like, I really want to get this job. I really want to be a part of this. And I'm like, what do you know about this company? What's this and this like? If you're going to be in sales and you're going to work for a brokerage, don't you want to know that their operations team is strong enough to actually put your money where your mouth is? Or if I'm saying that backwards, I don't even know. But if I'm going to go be a sales rep for someone ever again, I'm going to want to know how everything works. How do you guys keep your commitments? What's your on time? What other modes are you going to get into? How much can I sell? Because I've been in a company where I got tapped out. We couldn't do anymore. And it was the coolest thing to happen. I was pissed because I'm like, God, I'm in a company that I love, but we couldn't go out there and get any more customers because we wouldn't be able to handle it. Mm-hmm. So then I ended up going outside of my comfort zone and taking off that greediness, because we're trained as salespeople, be greedy as hell, right? Go out there, get business. You do care about the op, but you don't so much because you're just like, why are you not covering my freight? Mm-hmm. So it changed my mindset when I went into more of an executive leadership role, because then that greediness has to go away and you have to really emphasize on the people, their capabilities, and then what you said, TJ, finding those strengths, sometimes showing them, because there's a lot of people in logistics that don't even know what their strengths are. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of these companies don't take the time to sit down with people and go, hey, you know what? Maybe if you were in this type of role and this is why, and this is why, this is why, because you have all these different qualities that we're capturing. But my biggest, again, I'm kind of going all over the place, but to go back to the main thing is, if you're interviewing for a company, know that they can support you. Know that they have your back. Know that there's other capabilities for growth there too. And don't treat it so much as they're giving you a job. You're also joining it as you're giving your life. You know, you're giving your commitment. And I think it should be viewed both ways.
That's their culture. They have to value people.
Yeah.
I will tell you, it's a fine balance. It's a tough because
People over profit.
you look at why, you know, in the industry, like why when the brokerages really started growing and the model came in of this pull kids right out of college, pay them X amount, they got to bring in this much freight or they're gone, the turnover, the constant recruiting, these people don't know what they're doing and they're working a Reebok account. You know, that's where brokers really got a bad name, honestly. But, you know, a lot of those people aren't coming in going to give you their, like, you're just told to throw bodies at it and see what sticks. It's harder than hell to manage that. It's harder than hell to know, to really find the people that do care, or try to, because especially when you're like a new leader, because you're feeling like you got to get everybody on board. And there's just times you're just not going to. There's people that just are not there for that. They don't care. They're going to come in at 7 and leave at 5, even if their load's not covered, and not answer the phone all night long and come back in tomorrow. It just doesn't matter. Like, it's just part of it. I think it's a tough balance, because there's a method to that, but I don't think I think we're starting to see it less and less. I think the ones that are still doing it are starting to have that bad reputation. And I think that's why people are going away from it. But
well, TJ, I was spoiled, man. When I joined FedEx, they had a really good training program there. But when I left there and went to other companies, I didn't realize that wasn't a standard, and that, like, by and large, I mean, like, they did throw me to the Reebok account, but like, they also had a training program about like what the culture of FedEx is and how, you know, what Inco terms are, and all these like sort of different educational things that I needed to learn, where a lot of companies don't even bother to do that. They're just like, okay, here's an entry, go and do it. Or here's 10 leads that have been around the block 6,000 times. Go sell some freight and make your numbers. I mean, that's in logistics. That's what a lot of companies are like culturally. So I think that's a really, really good point. I mean, the one cool thing, if you have good work ethic, logistics is also great, because the people I know are really successful are the people who are willing to carry the bucket of water.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? You know, why do you think that as robust as our industry is, and so many different verticals and modes? Why do you think there's the training is lacking? Because you're right. It's mostly, here's you logging in a phone, but why don't companies invest more in their training and their development and their onboarding? You know,
I will tell you, going through that development, a lot of it has to do with, you know, like ownership in the top, their idea of a non-revenue producing role. They try to minimize those as much as they can. And with how fast it's moving, they're like, okay, well, we got our leader here, right, who's overseeing the carrier sales team or the account manager team. He can train them when they come in. He can train them. Well, you can't train them. You're in the board all day long. Everybody's asking you questions. You're fixing problems. I found myself having to live train almost. Like as a situation would come up, I'd have a couple new people come over, gather around. I'd walk them through why I'm doing it, what I'm doing.
That wins. That wins every time. Because if I give you a book and I said, let's go through all the freight lingo, and let's go through every mode, and here's all the equipment, and this is how you get a carrier, they're not going to retain that shit. They're just not. That live, as much as we all hate it, that's where I think I've grown the most, when I was like, I got a script, kind of like coming up with the podcast and stepping outside of that. You have the most success when you're given the tools, and then you step outside of those tools and get creative and walk into that fire and execute.
It can't be the only thing you have, though, because I think that was the biggest thing, was like, that was really what that's all we could, you know, do. It's a lot on you, and you don't get to everybody. That's where the whole hashtag handle it thing started, was the handle it. Like they'd come over, and I could tell what the situation was, and they'd tell me about it, and I'd say, go handle it, come back, tell me what you did. And I knew if it was really bad, I didn't do it. They came back, they're all pumped up, they're excited, they learned from experience. We started the whole handle it thing, because it was like nobody else was handling it. You know, like we didn't have the training there. And so like, but you got to have both. You got to have, you got to train live, but you also got to have like some sort of foundation, or it's just all over the place.
So I'm gonna ask again, because we just all talked about how it happens, right? How we do this, Nicole. Like, I agree with you in a lot of ways. Like, here's what you do, like live training. TJ, I agree with you. That's how it happens. But I'm asking why. Like, what?
Cycle of abuse, man. Cycle of abuse. Here's what happens. So people get into it and they go, fuck you, I got mine. Nobody trained me. I'm not going to train you. You will figure it out, and the strong will survive. There is a very strong permeance of that attitude in this industry. A lot of places and I don't know if it's just the Northeast where I was, but it was definitely there. I imagine it's probably throughout the industry, because it's that there's a very old school mentality that is like, if you made it through the flu, if you made it through the war, then you are good to go. Otherwise, you are like, I think they want, like, a lot of these places just want people to die and wash out in the first year. because there's just no help. And I think like there is just that attitude. Like nobody helped me. I'm not going to help you.
I will say my company now, I think it's different between a large company and a smaller company. So we're party 14. And I threw a post out the other day. That wasn't a made up story. I was literally standing by the door and I could hear someone training on Teams and going through every single thing. And as things were happening, he had to go, because we have an app now where we put our loads out to our own carrier base. So he was going through, putting that out to our carrier base, doing this and that. And the person training was able to go through every single step. And it was this, I'd never seen anything like it. And I started thinking, like, why is my team so willing to do that? Because everywhere I've worked in my past, it's what Brandon said. And it's really what Dooner just said with sink or swim. We need, do whatever you're going to do. And I think it really works because my team really wants to grow and they want to be able to step away and do different things. And they don't have that capability. They are
great leadership has given them the tools they need to get there.
Yeah.
Well, they want to. And so now they know by training the next person, they can actually do other things and make more money and help themselves grow and not have to work every Saturday or Sunday.
That's
and
culture. That's
and do all these different things that they weren't able to do. But
there's other places that's not the culture. It's not. It's if I sit in here and train this person, I'm going to lose an hour when I could go book 4 loads. I'm going to lose all that gross profit. That's what the culture is. Now it's like you have the culture of like, hey, let's develop and let's grow and let's think long-term money-wise rather than
together,
$600 GP.
That's just that stay when you start growing because party 14, right? Everybody is in it to win it. And then eventually it changes. Some people come and they bring a different mindset or different things to the game and you kind of let them come into that. But I don't know, Brandon, you've been in bigger companies. Can that mentality actually stay within a larger company?
I mean, it can. I mean, I think that it can. I mean, it comes down to the leadership. It does. It comes down to, there's different LMSs and there's training systems and things of that nature. But, I think that people learn by failure. I've been in an instance where, we've brought a new employee in and I had a training things that I knew set up, but it was one of those days. I think it was a Friday, which should have never brought someone new on a Friday. They had some experience, but we were in the middle of the shit. I mean, there was fires everywhere. So, I was like, hey, I know we got supposed to be doing this, but just shadow for a little bit. Well, that person never came back. One day. So it was a learning experience, but also too, it was like, well, if you're just shadowing, it was a shit show. And before I was all scared, like I don't want nobody to know. But at the end of the day, it was like, man, like the place that I worked for really took notice of it and really started implementing some training stuff right away. So I think for every failure, there's always open doors and things that happen. So, I think that, it's just,
I think it ebbs and flows. I think when you're like Nicole's size, I remember being that size. We all rallied around each other and then we started growing and it was just like, you brought people in different personalities and you lose that. And then I think after a while, when it gets a little bit too chaotic, I think you end up sitting down and saying, hey, we got to structure this out. I think it all comes back again, I think, because you go through situations like that.
Have you ever walked out on a job?
Have I?
I never have, no.
Not necessarily the first day, but like in general, have you walked out?
I have. I've always worked 2 jobs up until I got on even with Verizon and stuff. I bartended and I waited tables, and there'd be a time where maybe I'd be hungover. I'd come in, waiting tables or behind a bar, and I'd just be like, yeah, I'll piss on this. And I just leave.
I worked at Baskin Robbins. I had this manager when I was like 16, and it's like you get up. Like I went to school in Boston, I had to take training to school, had to come back, had to do homework, had to serve little league kids ice cream, and like the manager of the store finally came back from Papa Gino's, and she didn't bring me any pizza, and she went into like the walk-in freezer. There's this big line, and I just took off. I was like,
I worked at a video store when I was 16. My dad knew the guy that my dad knew the owner, and those like Amish candy, like I don't know, like there's like a whole shelf of like gummy worms and everything, but they're in like plastic containers. Like separated out. We had those in the front counter. Well, this dude I worked with, he was an idiot. He'd like open them up and like take a couple and eat them. Like every shift, he'd always do that. And you know, I'm at work at the video store. And I'm finally like, quit doing that, dude. Like that's disgusting. First of all, and I'm like, if Bill comes in, I'm gonna tell him. You know, I'm gonna tell him you're doing this. Like I'm not a tattletale, but like this is you're an idiot because the guy was just an idiot. And sure enough, I come in the next day and he freaking told him that I was doing it.
So you left?
So the guy got on me and was like would not believe me at all that it wasn't me. So I grabbed the big thing of the sour gummy worms and left. Walked out with it.
Stick
And
in your mouth and we'll hang out like a Cthulhu.
my dad whooped my ass when I got home. The guy, he called him like right away. I got home and I didn't get the gummy worms. Let's just say that.
I worked at a nursery with plants, obviously, for I think it was 2 days. And they wanted me to know all the plants. I'm like this 17-year-old kid. And they're like, you don't know what such and such flower is? How are you going to ring this up? I'm like, who the hell at 16 or 17 is going to know in regards to plants? So I literally did the deuces and stormed out of the nursery. Yeah.
I said video store. Rhonda said, a what?
Yeah, Blockbuster, TJ.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
big red box. Yeah. You guys, we're already wrapping up here. It's 6:11.
You're wearing the shirt, TJ?
What's that?
Is that a Blockbuster shirt?
No, it's Meyer. Remember me and Brandon talked about it.
That's a bear.
Hey, real quick though, let's go over a couple things. We talked about, you know, what we've went through. It's sometimes it's cool to sit back and think about it, like that you didn't end up giving up, and you're like, why didn't I give up? I probably should have. But like, let's just go around real quick and talk about what we see in the future, like what our plans are and goals are, you know, for moving forward.
You mean in
Brandon?
general?
Yeah, just where you're at now, what you see, you know.
Okay.
Your goal. Nicole.
All right, I'll go. My goal is to make Freight Waves and Freightcast like a mainstream business site and make it as big and as accessible as possible. And we've kind of talked on it when we were talking about training. And my initial thesis when I started podcasting was that a lot of the way people talked was at like this intermediate advanced level. And it was very hard for people who are new to the industry or outside the industry to understand what was going on. So it's always been my goal to tether those concepts in real world applications and be mindful of my first day walking into FedEx when I think about these different concepts and how much they need to be sort of reduced down to people who don't have all of that information, especially on a broader, more mainstream level. So my goal is to kick the JOC's ass and make FreightWaves the biggest effing thing on earth.
Nice.
You're doing a good job so far, dude.
Pretty damn good job.
My goal is to get every CEO, director, everybody at that level in manufacturing to give a damn about logistics, to care just enough to put somebody better than their brother-in-law in that job.
Yes. No more brother-in-laws, Tony.
That's right.
Wait, Tony, Andrew says you got fired for you walked out over not getting enough pieces of flare when you were.
Hey, I'm not wearing 12. 11's my limit of my flare pieces stop at 11.
Wait, what is the name of it? Shenanigans? That's the one in Office Space.
Shenanigans.
You know, that's where I learned
Really
to Fridays. You know, and I don't know if they do it anymore, but they used to flare and all that stuff on your shirts.
Dude, I was a host at Fridays when I was 17.
Oh, that's awesome! It's great restaurant.
I think I had my first legal alcoholic drink at a Fridays.
Oh yeah, the one where I worked. They were. I don't know if that's like a TJ Fridays thing, but at least in like the late 90s, they didn't card there at all.
No, no, they didn't.
You'd go during the happy hour.
You're 20 years too late. Thanks.
I think my goal.
Smoking there back then too. It's crazy to think you could like smoke like a TJ Fridays. I don't know. It's weird to think about now.
Anywhere. Thankfully.
I think my goal it's one of the things for the National Transportation Club. It's just kind of 3 core values, which is network, empower, and educate. So my goal moving forward is to keep doing that. Is just to network, empower other people, educate, and then on top of that, just keep learning.
My goal is to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I want to always stay on my toes to keep learning different things, keep networking with people. And one of the biggest things I would really like to do is grow my company to obviously a significant size. I'm not worried about dollars and cents at this moment on the show, but I want to be able to help other entrepreneurs going through this journey, because in the beginning, I was terrified. I mean, just taking that step and being alone. And I normally had an executive team and a crew that I could lean on. And there was no one for me to talk to. And I'd talk to my husband or friends, but it never helped me. So I felt so alone in that journey in the beginning. But I want to be that for people. You know, I want to be able to help them through those things and help them with those tiny things they don't think about that bite you in the ass in business, first of all, because there's so much of that stuff, and really help them get to the next level with nothing in it for me, just more of being that coach and being there for someone to help them lift themselves up. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Tony, did you go?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, my goal is kind of just, I just had this vision of making, being on the asset side and being in dispatch, just being innovative, making it relevant again, making it a place to want to go. I just remember watching it where we were slinging freight, man, but we had trucks, and it was like, as we grew the brokers, that was like the place to be. That was making all the money. And like the dispatch side was just like this dusty old corner over in where we used to all sit. And it was the same older, people that knew all their stuff, but it was like, nobody wanted to be involved with it, around it. I want to make it like a destination, like something where people want to go work, where it's fun, where it's innovative, where there's like a lot going on. It's not just like, we're just dispatching trucks and it's just, I want to build that. And I've gotten to the point where I've seen, it kind of clicked when some of the older guys that are in there really bought into what I had brought in. And I didn't know if they were. That's kind of a scary thing coming in at 32 years old and having guys that have been in the industry for 30 years and telling them what to do. But they bought in and it really clicked. And I'm like, this could work. So that's kind of my goal. I want to make it something that, relates with brokerages and it kind of can get on pace with their type of technology that would not get left behind. So that's my goal.
Awesome.
Very cool. So we are out of time, but Tim, thank you so much for coming on
Thank you, Tim.
the show and bringing some pizzazz. You definitely have some. It's going to be my new thing.
Oh, you got a koala.
That's
There
unbearable.
he is.
Hey, dad joke. I forgot. So what do you got? What do you got, Dooner?
I got a skeleton, man.
Oh, that's my boy. That's Bones. Dooner, you don't remember this, but I put out a video like during COVID, and I didn't get nobody responded like they understood what I was saying. But you had put out a video, and the video went like this. I was like, "Hey, I was watching Put That Coffee Down today, and I was inspired by the conversation because it seemed to be well above sea level, and that's not just because it was the dune and the hill." And then I paused because it was you and Kevin Hill, and then I kept going. I realized nobody's going to laugh because it's just me recording a video, but nobody commented. Nobody got the joke.
We do now.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Oh,
Appreciate
good,
it. We'll
good.
see y'all next week. Thanks for
There's
coming
no
on.
Thursday night football game on. What happened?
Go Koalas.
God, you'll have koalas or skeletons instead.
Eucalyptus.
Go follow Dooner on LinkedIn.
Go follow Dooner.
What the truck?
What the truck. Follow Hold My Beer. You can follow me at Panda, assetdispatcher.com.
Fingers are stuck in its